Hello, everyone, and welcome to Science Together, a podcast series by DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance, where we delve into the science driven by the researchers and their remarkable journeys in science. In this episode, we are going to talk about our tigers and the impact of inbreeding. I am your host, Dr. Rajeshri Sanyal. In this captivating episode, we are joined by Dr. Uma Ramakrishnan, an India Alliance Senior Fellow. Uma, let's start by getting to know you better in the section I like to refer to as the person behind the science. Can you share the crux of your profile and research with us, please?
Hi, my name is Uma Ramakrishnan, and I'm a professor and India Alliance Senior Fellow at the National Centre for Biological Sciences, TIFR, Bengaluru. I'm really lucky to be using this fellowship to follow my passion, which is understand more about endangered species. My work through this fellowship has focused on understanding the impacts of inbreeding in India's national animal, the tiger.
Biomedical research may seem by many to be complex and out of reach. What motivated you to pursue this field?
Biomedical research provides us tools which we can use to interrogate the natural world. That's what I'm doing. I'm using tools from genomics, principally combined with field collected samples to understand more about tigers in the wild and the status of genetic variation in them. These tools allow me to understand these questions, and without them, it's not possible. So, I guess I am a biomedical scientist because of the tools.
Now, let's delve a bit into the science in the section of our conversation called Talking Science. In a nutshell, can you educate us about the importance of genetic variation in mammals?
Genetic variation is like money in the bank. The more you have, the better equipped you are to deal with unknown future challenges. Because of this, if you have low genetic variation, it suggests that you have a high probability of extinction. So I try to understand why and how much genetic variation endangered species have, because such understanding can help us predict future survival of species.
As we look a little deeper at your work in focus, can you share the important factors which shape the way our mammals genetically evolve to accommodate these variations?
When populations are small, like you have in a typical endangered species, genetic variation is low. But also, since there are very few individuals, we begin to see mating between relatives or inbreeding. This results not only in low genetic variation, but certain disadvantageous traits, alleles, phenotypes, looks being thrown up in the population because relatives tend to share them. This is called inbreeding depression.
Can you shed some light into how this affects the survival and longevity of the tiger species at Ranthambore?
Our work through the India Alliance Fellowship has shown that tigers in Ranthambore are inbred. While they're not yet experiencing inbreeding depression, their future is uncertain because they are inbred. How do we secure a future for the tigers here and other such populations? Well, one option is to maintain connectivity naturally so that tigers from other areas can move into these isolated populations and rescue genetic variation in a way. Another option, not so great, is to potentially introduce individuals. But either way, genetic rescue is the only way to offset the possible detrimental effects of inbreeding depression for the future.
What can be done to reduce this issue? Are there any minimally invasive solutions?
As I just mentioned in the last answer, genetic rescue is the only option for such populations, but more broadly, science based intervention to thinking about survival of endangered species is something we have to consider for the future.
How has the COVID 19 pandemic affected your research?
The COVID pandemic has been extremely difficult for all of us. And I think that it's our mental health that has been affected the most. But that aside, from a practical perspective, it was very difficult to do fieldwork. Travel became difficult, and this affected the rate at which we could make progress in our research.
In this final segment of our conversation, let's talk about research impact. In your assessment, how do your project's current goals impact our society's appreciation for genetic diversity in forest ecosystems in India?
When you think about the survival of tigers, you immediately wonder how many tigers are there. It's not natural for us to think about inbreeding as possibly affecting survival of a species like the tiger. I hope that the approaches and the research we've done will open people's minds to thinking about genetics as also a part of conservation science, and hopefully will provide a framework not just for tigers but for other species and the survival of biodiversity in general.
Do you have any recipes for success that you would like to share with our listeners?
I guess there is no one recipe for success, but I'd have to say for the success of my work, it's really critical to be passionate and have a lot of patience. Many of the things that we do require a lot of permissions, bureaucracy, and without that motivation, it's difficult to keep going.
How has your India Alliance Fellowship helped you and your research?
The India Alliance Fellowship that I received has been transformative for my research. I can say that without hesitation. It allowed us to conduct tiger genomics, which is not something we had done before, and really the flexibility to explore really exciting questions, which have really caused a quantum change in the quality of research we've been able to produce.
Before we conclude, please share with us an element of your research project that you find most rewarding.
As a young student, I was always interested in molecular ecology, and I read papers about mountain lions in California and what's happening to them and their genetic variation. I'm really fortunate that we've worked together to produce knowledge and research on tigers. And I hope that this becomes part of how students see molecular ecology and think about endangered species in the future.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights with us. Our conversation about genetic variation in mammals will promote a greater awareness about the role and importance of tigers in India's forest ecosystems. Your work on this project will inspire many to explore exciting careers in science and research. And thank you for listening, everyone. More about the research that we have covered in today's episode is shared in the description below. And so concludes this episode of Science Together by DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance.